Welcome to another episode of 12 Tone Warrior, the hangout for keyboard players who love to play classic rock and are either in or would love to be in a classic rock band or maybe even a country band. That's kind of what this hangout or this channel is all about, and that's what I do. I'm in two bands. I play keyboards for a country band and a classic rock covers band. Just a humble local guy in my area, kind of giving out some advice and such on the internet and just wanting to have a little discussion or just put my stuff out there just because I like to. I'm a very IRL or in real life musician, so what I do is pretty much out there in the real world, and I just reflect on things that I do out there in the real world here on this channel as much as I can by talking to you about what I do while maybe interspersing it with some live footage of the bands I'm in. And I also will do things like not necessarily keyboard lessons, but keyboard technique stuff. Like I've already done one episode of that, episode 3, and we'll get into that, I think, some more in the next one. For this video, however, we are going to do something that I'm going to call sound and stage. And so what this is all about, and I got into it a little bit in my first episode, is, and you don't have to go back and watch any of these, just follow me, if you just want to follow me along from where I'm at, that's fine. But if I do refer back to ones that I think where there's important information, I will let you know. And I guess I'll try to provide more links and stuff like that in these videos to things that I've either talked about, videos I've shown, whatever. I'll get to that. But anyway, for this episode, Sound and Stage is going to focus on making your band sound right and the kind of equipment you need to play live gigs, whichever kind they are, large or small. And so this will be kind of like a primer on how to do that. And there's really no way to do it without making mistakes. We've all made them. Back before the internet was around and I was first trying to do this, I didn't know very much about what was needed other than you bring your instrument, you bring your amp, and there you go. And if you sing, you bring a mic and hope you have a place to plug it in. It was all sort of make as you go along back then. None of us back when I was starting out knew anything about monitor wedges or the mixing board or it was comical, but it's a learning process everyone goes through. So essentially, let's get started let's kind of work our way up from being in a very local band, such as Sheep Dip, the band I'm in that does local covers in the southern New Hampshire area. And we do get around quite a bit, but we mainly stick to this area. Sometimes we get a little bit into Massachusetts and such, and little other areas in New England. But really, we just do local places, and it's things like, sports bars, VFW or American Legion halls, town squares. There's lots of town square, small towns in New England where the town will fund a summer concert series, and so both bands I'm in play plenty of those. So it's all small things where your band you need a sound system, of course, and you're going to have your own, but this isn't something so elaborate that you need to provide sound as if you're playing a festival stage. We'll talk about what's needed just for a basic scenario like that. So in my first episode, I showed you the kind of gear you would need to have to get through and cover rock covers in a covers band. And I suggested 2 keyboards at a minimum, one for your piano stuff, the other for organ and other parts. But I didn't get too much into what you need for the band, although I touched on it a little bit. So once you have your stuff covered, and so your keyboards, a stand to put them on, your stool, you'll see in episode 1, I show you my kit, my rig. One of the important pieces you should have in that is a monitor for yourself, because when you're doing small gigs, your band is expected to provide all of its own sound. So what your band needs to have, and typically your band leader, the people or person who started the band, are going to be the ones who usually have the 2 speakers on the pole, at least 1 bass sub, maybe 2, the mixing board, any effects, and so on. But one piece of gear you will definitely want to have in your possession is something like this. It's called a spot monitor. This one, let me see, get it in front of the camera. This one is it's sort of a clone of a Mackie classic spot monitor. That was this one's made by Behringer, and it's called a Eurolive. I'm not going to go over the exact model, but they still make these, and you get them for, like, I don't know, I think the last time I bought them they were around $300 or something dollars, maybe $350, $400. Maybe I got it on a deal. You definitely want to have something like this, because if you're only if for keyboards, you're going to be coming out of the band's PA speakers, just like the vocals do. And you want to be able to hear yourself, at least yourself, if not other things. So having one of these and plugging directly into it is your best option. That way you have control. And let me bring this back, because I'll show you. If you look at the controls on here, you have a couple different channels. You have 2 inputs there that'll take either 1/4 inch or XLR, and then you even have line inputs there. And these are all controllable via their own volume, and sometimes even EQ knobs. So what I do is I run directly into that. I use the headphone jack out of my main board and run directly into this through the line inputs, and that way, and then that has its own independent volume knob, so I can hear myself. And then not only can I do that, but the band's mixing board can send monitor out signals back to band members. And so what the person running our mixing board does is send me a line out that I then go into line number 2 right on the front here and control that using its own volume knob. And that way I can get the vocals running through this thing, as well as my keyboards or whatever else I might need to hear. In the case of the small band, all I really need to have run through it is so I can hear the vocals. Whatever's coming out of the PA that I normally wouldn't hear, being a backline musician, not right up in front near the PA speakers. And in these small bands, like in Sheep Dip, the guitar and the bass and most of the drums, everything except the kick drum, are all just being produced on their own. We don't mic the guitar amps or the bass amp or run the bass direct through the mixing board, nor the drums, except we will mic the kick drum. And in most small room situations, like the places I mentioned, the small rooms, sports bars, again, American Legion and VFW halls, you don't have that much of a throw. The room is small, and coming in there with like heavy duty equipment with everything mic'd and coming out of a huge PA system really is overkill. All you need is a decent sized PA system with a decent amp, a good mixing board, at least 12 channel with both mono and stereo inputs, and maybe an effects unit, but not really, because a lot of mixing boards come with at least the basic effects like reverb and delay. And if you have that, you don't really need anything else. So again, for the small band situations in these small rooms, all I really need to hear through this is myself, which I go in direct, and then whatever I can get coming out of the mixer, which is mainly for the vocals. And I can balance my own keyboard signal versus the general PA board signal coming through the monitor. So that's very helpful to have your own monitor so you can hear and be in control of your sound. And that's always a thing. You're going to have, in your first gigs, you're going to be making mistakes. It's like, I can't hear this and I can't, and these things, they just happen. They still happen. They still happen to me. They still happen to us. But, having your own personal spot monitor really keeps you in control of what you can hear. So you're at this super good comfort level. You can hear everything. The drums, small bands, again, small rooms. The drums are usually right next to you as a keyboard player because you're usually on the back line. So you can hear them perfectly without them having to be sent through the monitor. And the same with the guitars. Usually our guitarists are just running through Fender Twins, just set up kind of a little bit in front of the drums and at an angle. And so we can all hear the guitar signals loud enough. We on the stage and the audience can hear all of that. So those don't get mic'd. Bass amp, same deal. It's just all coming out of there. And we'll just throw, like I said, we'll just throw a mic in front of the kick drum to add some, basic, reinforcement to that kick drum. So that's really, that kind of does it for small band situations. You want to be able to hear yourself, be in control of your sound, and in the case of Sheep Dip, and in the case of what you might really want to do to save money, and again, be in 100% control of your sound, is for one of the band members to be running the soundboard. It's sort of run it in a set it and forget it type of scenario instead of someone having to run the faders. So you can save money by not having a sound guy. It's not really difficult to do, especially if you're just doing small clubs and rooms like what I'm talking about at this stage of the talk. Whew, so, come here. Say hi. Hey, say hi to Smudge. Smudge had to cut in and was kind of meowing out there, wanting a little attention. Yeah, aw, Smudge. Look at the camera. Oh. Oh. Well, it's time to get back to keyboard talk, Smudgy. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Okay. Ah, okay. Whew, cat scratch fever little thing there is over, and well, that cat can scratch pretty good. Get some cat hair on me. I'm good. Ready to continue. I like my cat. I'm sure you cat lovers all love your cats. Just when they kind of crawl up and down the keyboards, I have to kind of scoot little Smudgy off. But Smudgy's a good cat. Anyway, on with the show. For these small band situations, of course, you're going to have the mixing board, again, likely owned by the band that you audition for. And usually that mixing board will have, if it's one of the newer ones, if we're not talking about like super old 70s and 80s ones, it's likely going to have some stereo inputs as well as the mono inputs. And that's where your keyboards will best place to put them in, is into the stereo inputs. And then of course, and usually these are, I used to have a Behringer 12-track one back in the day when I had my own little mini studio that I was doing. I would record like projects my wife was working on with her violin quartet, as well as some of my own material. We did a Christmas CD that I showed on an earlier episode. But anyway, those are ideal boards to have because they're really small, they're portable, they usually have their own built-in effects, and they tend to do the job. And but that, again, that's not a piece of gear you will likely have to have. The band is likely going to have their own mixing board, and that becomes part of the setup. So small band situation like Sheep Dip, small rooms that you're playing, all you really need besides your own gear, of course, your keyboards and everything, is a spot monitor, and then also what you should have, every keyboard player should have a direct box, or one or two, depending on whether you're going to send mono or stereo signal. So here is an example of a direct box that's mono. This is a Behringer direct box. And this is the one I use here, this Radial, a bit higher quality. This is a Radial Pro D2 stereo direct box. And so this is good. This is basically two of these. And that's because I send a stereo signal out from my main board, and my upper board is simply the output of that is sent into the input of my lower board, preventing me from having to send out two stereo pairs, which is going to be a pain for both your own band and a larger band that you might play in, where you play stages, to deal with. It's just too much. And in some situations, when I get into talking about the larger venues you might be expected to play, some of those still just go with mono signals, but we'll get into that. So again, for being in the smaller band situations, usually having those 12-channel or slightly more inexpensive mixers allows you to run a stereo pair into it, and then all of the mono channels can be saved for microphones and whatnot. So there you go. And so your small band will have the PA speakers, the mixer, any effects for that, and then the guitarists have their amps, bassist has his amp, drummer has drums. That's all you need for these small rooms. Okay, so I described more what I do with Sheep Dip, which is cover bands, very local. And what I do also in as part of my music life is I'm in a country band that I've been in for a few years, more than the Sheep Dip band. So with the Michael David band, which is the country band I'm in, we tend to play larger venues, and this band doesn't, except for every once in a while when we want to revisit an old place for old time's sake, we tend to not play the smaller clubs, bars, and VFW and all that business. What we do mostly are festivals and fairs. We do the larger town square summer concert series. We'll do a lot of those. And a lot of what we've done for a while are things like campsites, but a lot of fairs and festivals, a lot of things like the Deerfield Fair in New Hampshire, the Woodstock Fair in Connecticut, the Sterling Fair in Massachusetts, so for a lot of events like this, which is the majority of what the country band does. Well, although we, again, at the smaller ones that we'll do once in a while, as well as the town commons concerts, the summer concert series that the small towns have, those ones we have to provide all of our own system. And again, for these things like the campsite gigs, we have to provide all of our own sound, just like the smaller venue band does, with the exception that for these things we have a larger throw. We often have to play a large field where we're putting out sound from a gazebo like structure to a large field. In this case, we have to mic the guitars, and the bass might go direct, and we have to mic the entire drum kit. The whole band has to go through that PA system to throw out enough sound so everything sounds balanced and mixed from a distance as well as up close. So now when it comes to the festivals and fairs, there you're dealing with your band doesn't have to bring the PA system and all that sound gear. Well, you bring the guitarists, bass players still bring their amps, but you can forego the mixer, the PA system, and monitors, and well, not your spot monitor, still bring that. And what you're going to deal with at these festivals and fairs is a sound guy or a sound person. And this sound person will assist you when your band gets there. And, as your band is setting up, the sound guy works with you to, okay, here's hooking up the mic. The sound guy will hook up the mics and then help you with your connections. So he'll do the guitarists from the pedal board, getting them connected to the main system, and will work with you. And that's where you present him with, or her, or whoever your sound person is, with your direct box. They will plug their XLRs into this end, and you plug your keyboards into this end, where the 1/4 inch are, and you're all set. And then you work out balancing sound with the sound guy, who is going to be usually out in front of the stage in a rain sheltered covered booth. And you're going to do mixing checks, and it's going to be, the sound guy will go, let's hear the keyboards. You play the keyboards, and then you get then he goes thumbs up, and then after the sound checks for the main instruments, we do monitor checks. Now for these festival and fair situations where you're playing on a larger stage, it's not only different in that you have more space. You're on a stage. You can have room to stretch out. So you're not as tightly tucked in with your band members as you are at these smaller gigs. So the sound becomes more dispersed as instruments and amps get more spread out. So usually what they also provide you with are called floor wedges at these festivals and fairs. That's part of what the sound guy's sound system, or the sound system that belongs to the event, or the sound company that is hired to do the sound for the event. And usually that's the sound guy is the person who owns that company. Maybe not owns it, but works for it. So you're going to coordinate with a sound guy, usually a guy, not being sexist or anything. It's just the way these things are. I'll just say sound guy, but yeah, you might maybe it's a chick, maybe sound person, but let's not get too hung up on that. And by using these floor wedges, those floor wedges are basically, those are the old-fashioned monitors before these smaller spot monitors got popular. I never even knew what a spot monitor. They weren't even a thing until, I guess, the aughts maybe, or into the 2010s. I didn't even, maybe they were made in the 90s, but certainly not back in the 80s. I don't remember them at all. But you have the option. They'll say, well, there's your monitor, there's your floor wedge, and that may have you covered for everything else, like the vocals and everything, and then you can just use your spot monitor for your own keyboards. If you still think that whatever the sound guy is sending you back, you're still not hearing enough of your keyboards, you don't have to bother the sound guy with that. You can just say, I'm fine, and then you can send more of your own keyboard signal back to yourself by sending it direct on that separate inline, that line in channel. Okay, so this is a lot more complicated, as you can see, than just doing the small band thing. So what the sound guy will now do is, beside the main sound checks to make sure he can hear everything, he will do the monitor checks, and that's where he will go to each person and say, can you hear the vocals? Can you hear that guitarist? Can you hear, because everything, all these instruments are being sent to the main board and then being sent back out through the monitor lines. So what you have to do is then work with the sound guy, yes, thumbs up, I can hear that, and then he'll go round robin around the whole band, making sure everyone hears what they need to hear. Now, I use the spot monitor and prefer it over something like in-ears. So what are in-ears? Those are usually wireless pack that would be on the musician's, back pocket. It's like clipped onto the back pocket of a musician, and then it's a wireless. And then that's connected to a pair of earphones, and then all of your monitor, that stuff you need to hear through your monitor, are just heard through these earbuds. And really professional ones have it where the earbuds are made to your custom ear so that no air gets in there to it. It's crazy, but I tried it and found it very sterile. For some reason, I just, even on the larger stages, I prefer open air sound. I just prefer to hear what's going on around me. It's a more natural feel to me. I know it's old school. You can't teach an old dog new tricks kind of a thing. Maybe a little bit, but it's just my preference. It's part of what makes, for me, being playing live music in a band exciting. It makes it, if once you start putting on headphones or using earbuds, you're turning that live experience into a studio thing. Click tracks now, none of that stuff. In the bands I play in, it's all live, no click tracks. Everything is executed live. It's just exciting, raw live music. And in those small band situations, when somebody records it using a recorder, and you hear that back, it sounds raw. I mean, you hear the drums just smacking in your face and, in your ears. And it's not like, it doesn't have the more processed sound of running everything through the PA and then through limiters and processors. It's just, I just love that small band, live, dynamic, raw rock and roll sound. It's just like nothing else. And that's why also I just love being a live musician over doing studio work. I find studio work very technical. A lot of, I guess, as a musician rather than I wouldn't really call myself an artist. I call myself a musician for sure. An artist, I guess when I put out my 2 CDs, I can make that claim. But as a musician, as someone who mainly doesn't do that, I tried it, but haven't really gone back to it. I don't really take the title artist. I'm musician. So, studio work, therefore, just doesn't seem appealing to me. It's kind of like the situation where, doesn't it feel like that Steely Dan thing where after the first 2 albums, they broke up the original band and just went to studio musicians. And then the rest of the band were like, well, what the hell? What are we going to do? And some of them went and joined the Doobie Brothers. Because those guys, guys like Jeff Skunk Baxter, right? They just like to play live. They like to pick up their guitar instrument and just go at it with solos. And they love to play. These are people who love, and that's the kind of musician I am. I love to play. So how did I get off on that tangent? We're talking about stage and sound, but anyway, maybe we're getting toward the end of this conversation, but I hope I covered everything when it comes to dealing with the bands that play at larger venues. There's more coordinating. It takes a lot longer to, maybe not a lot longer, but at least an hour of more time to get through a sound check when you have to coordinate with a sound guy. Then when it's your own band and the sound settings on your own mixer, and you've been through it, dozens of times, and your own routine. Usually, like with Sheep Dip, we can arrive at a gig and be set up within an hour, like everything set up, drums, keyboards, everything sound checked. And usually we don't sound check through a whole song. We can usually tell after everyone has checked the mic signals, their instrument signals. We're ready to roll at that point. We're set, and we just go on and play our set. And then maybe our bass player, who might be connected wirelessly to his amp, will walk out into the audience a little to hear what the sound sounds like, and then go back to the board, make an adjustment, and then that's it. You're set for the night. Set it and forget it. And your small band, saves money, doesn't have to hire a sound person. And that's great. Because really for these small gigs, you don't need one. You're doing overkill with hiring a sound guy. That's going to eat up, a good deal of your pay for the night. So I would say, deal with your own sound. It's not that much when you're just doing the small circuit. But when like I said, coming with the country band does, it's a little more involved, and we're often dealing with the festivals and fairs thing. Sound and stage. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Give this a thumbs up. Well, 1 thumb up is fine if you liked it, and subscribe to be notified of future episodes. And I will see you on the next one.